Welcome to the SoulScape Show, where together we will explore and discover the depth and breadth of your soul. I'm your host, Gabrielle Spencer, and today we have with us the amazing and world-renowned Elizabeth Wood and Lori Spagna, here for our very special series, the Panelist Discussions. Elizabeth Wood is a world-class seer. She is on the cutting edge of quantum and galactic anthropology. With her lifelong ability to see into all dimensions and work with the quantum and spiritual realms, her remote viewing and healing work has helped people all over the world. She's called the Living Library, an oracle, and way shower. And Lori Spagna is a best-selling author, spiritual teacher, energy healer, ascension guide, multidimensional channel, animal communicator, visionary, and all-around amazing person of light. And today we will be doing our first show in the Panelist Discussion series. So join me in welcoming Elizabeth and Lori. I know. It's very exciting. All right, everybody. Thank you for being here. This is the SoulScape Show, and it is about discovering the breadth and depth of our souls. And I have with me two amazing women. Both I just love chatting with them all the time because they're pretty cool ladies. I have with us today Elizabeth Wood and Lori Spagna, and I'm going to just give you a brief hello and introduction. Most everybody out there knows who they are. They're that well known, and they are that awesome. They're everywhere. I don't know about you guys, but I see you guys popping up everywhere, and that's what matters, right? You're out there doing your work and following your hearts and your mission, and it's going really far and wide, right? So both of these women have some amazing things that are similar yet different, right? So both of them are seers and visionaries and teachers and healers and do amazing things in the cosmic universe. And that's how I've come to know them, because of these attributes, right? All of us are doing various aspects of those things. So this is going to be a special show. And it's something that we haven't done before. It is a panelist show, and we're going to explore what we're seeing now and what's happening, because everything's changing so quickly, right? And it's different but the same, and we're relating it back to things we know and understand, and then going into things we don't know and understand, but that we have intuition about. So that's why both of you are here, is to go deeper and into things that you might not always put together. But what I find is when we speak to one another, new things come out that just come in because of the combined energy and the energy of everybody that's here, right? That's what makes it really cool. Would you each like to say hello?
Hello.
Come on, Lori, I know you talk more than that.
I talk a lot. It's a rare state when you can find me almost talked out. But I am a little talked out. No, I'm happy to be here. Very grateful to be here. Grateful to see both of you lovely ladies who I love so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And you, Miss
Elizabeth, talk out for long. The moment you bring something juicy up, I'll have plenty to say.
Oh, you'll just jump right in? Okay.
Impossible for me to be talked out. Impossible.
I'm glad to be here too. It's really beautiful to be able to be here with Lori and you, Gabrielle.
It's all good, you. All right. It is awesome to be here with both of you, because here's the thing. I want to know, as we're all around talking about various things, we use a lot of words, right? And I think we understand what we're saying and we try our best to explain it, right? But it changes. Even those words change, right? So there was something I was reading about that you put out, Elizabeth, that had to do with galactic consciousness versus global consciousness. So I thought we should just start right in the deep end, right?
Sure.
So I would love it if both of you can start, Elizabeth, with your understanding what that is, how that affects our abundance and our consciousness, and how that's going to be where we're heading and what that means. So both of you, that's the question. Galactic consciousness versus global consciousness, where we're moving and how that affects us. Is that good enough?
Oh, good.
Juicy.
All right. So but it's a discussion. So back and forth. It doesn't have to be one and then the other. Yes?
You mean we can interrupt each other and cut each other off?
You can, Lori. Absolutely. Give you permission. Because this is where our audience, it's a discussion. Like, we talk to one another, and when we talk on the phone, think of this like we're talking to each other on the phone, right? And we have a discussion, same way. So everybody's out there playing in the same roles. It just has to do with sharing what it is. And if somebody else has something that comes in, they want to share, that's what I'd love for us to do.
Well, Elizabeth, you start, since it was your article and
Sure.
writing that prompted it.
No problem. So if I was to pretend that no one knows what I'm talking about, and I'm going to have to start fresh, right? And identify the terms here. We're defining these terms.
Yes.
So global consciousness has to do with human beings being aware of each other at a global scale. And, that's not the case. That hasn't been the case historically. It's only until modern times, really with the dawn of the internet, that now you and I can easily sit here and think about some lovely woman in Africa and another person in Turkey and another person in China fairly easily without a lot of boundaries. And that's pretty new. So global consciousness is a very new thing for human culture at a global scale. We're talking about universal, all of us being one species. And so the next step is galactic consciousness, which means that human beings then will eventually, with ease, be able to consider, oh, well, yeah, those are our friends in Alpha Centauri. And, okay, those are those folks that live in this particular realm. Or, hey, Syrians and Pleiadians, we know them. This is starting to become something in our awakening, and in the process, I think, of consciousness, being able to know that we're human beings on a playing field that's not just this lonely little planet with nobody paying attention to us. That's not the case. We have a galactic stage we're playing on too, and that's not the end of it. We're going to go into then universal consciousness eventually too. That would be the cool goal for everybody. But in the meantime, we're all still kind of getting used to this idea that we're not alone in this galaxy, let alone the universe. So when I say, hey, Earth global consciousness is great, now we got to keep going. There's more to do. That's what I mean. And how does it affect abundance? Well, it means that we all really need to get going on this oneness piece, recognizing each human as a sovereign being, and allowing that to be a natural global culture. We're going to have a global culture. It doesn't mean we're going to end our personal local cultures, but we need to be careful and conscious that global culture is all inclusive, it's all supportive for us to then launch into relationships at a galactic level that are going to happen without us if we aren't conscious about it. So I think when it comes to abundance, it's galactic abundance. It's an abundance of wisdom and knowledge. It's social capital, being able to say, hey, we've learned all these things from the Pleiadians. We've learned all these things from the Syrians or whomever. And what can we give back? Because abundance is a flowing thing. It's not just one way.
Right.
And this is happening already. Lori and I, it's happening. It's happening to all of us on the call. Now it's time for us to make this very conscious, an effort that's conscious, a galactic consciousness that will be very important for our whole entire human race. So that's what I see when I'm thinking about why is galactic consciousness important.
Okay. Now, Lori, before you answer, I'm going to give you this question from the audience, okay? It has to do with global consciousness too. How do you see entanglement in the quantum growing, changing, evolving, transmuting as galactic consciousness comes more online? So how is it going to be working out in the quantum field as we grow, change, and evolve and transmute? How does this affect it?
Well, first, I just want to say, to me, global consciousness is not just about humans becoming conscious. It's about all animals, plants, minerals, and Mother Earth too, which I know Elizabeth knows that. I'm not disagreeing with anything she said. I'm just adding that because we, as a human society, have been so unconscious even about the degree of consciousness that that animals have, that they are actually so much more conscious than us. In fact, if you think just a really good example about animal consciousness, I would love to share here, because this is about us becoming globally conscious, is the recognition of how much more conscious all other consciousness is than us. Like in terms of a comparison, it's not a good way, but that's a way. So understand right now you're conscious of the fact that the United States exists on a globe, even if you believe in the flat earth, which isn't real or true. Not really, unless to the degree that you create that and believe and buy into it. Okay, you understand there's a country called Russia. You understand that there's an ocean called the Atlantic Ocean, but you're not thinking about it. Right, unless I bring it to your attention.
Right.
Animals are so conscious and aware, they don't have to think about it. But they are way more conscious and aware than we are. But they're not thinking about it or analyzing it or contemplating the fifth dimension. They don't analyze it or categorize it the way we do. But they are fully, wholly, and completely aware of it and beyond it. So they have intergalactic consciousness. They have global consciousness in ways that we are just waking up to. Same is true for Mother Earth. And in general, same is true for all of the other kingdoms, the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdom, etc. So that's first. When we talk about global consciousness, we're talking about expanding our consciousness beyond the limitations of what humanity has believed and perceived in the past and what we have categorized in our linear minds. Now, when we talk about galactic consciousness, I completely agree with what Elizabeth was saying. And what I want to add to that is that we're becoming aware of our role as galactic beings, interacting with the galaxy and beyond, and all other beings who we have not yet really met or interacted with for the most part, other than to the degree that we're mostly mentally able to telepathically communicate with them, energetically able to energetically exchange information and energy with them, and also recognize ourselves as part of this whole, and also discern and distinguish between them as individuals. For example, I was recently on a call or summit I was leading, and I do a lot of channeling, and I had all these gray hybrids coming in, exchanging, and I knew they weren't my team or anyone I had interacted with before, and they were almost like pushing to get to the front energetically. It's like a whole new way of interacting. Okay, that's galactic, but also understand, as it relates to the question that was asked, galactic, universal, we're talking about dimensions beyond the dimensional highway of the galaxy that we are interacting on. So that does include the quantum field and all known and unknown aspects of that. So now, how does enlightenment interact with that? Well, we're becoming conscious of things we have been completely unconscious of as it relates to the infinite reality, infinite, infinite, beyond quanta. And we don't even know what all that is, because we're becoming more and more enlightened as we seek to expand our consciousness and explore realities beyond our reality. So to me, that's what this is.
So is it more like that we're continually expanding our ability to reach into the quantum?
Yes.
And that we're able to...
Sorry.
Yes.
So in the reality, and this is related to abundance, This is
Yes.
the juicy stuff I'm about to give you. And the reality that we've been existing in, even right now, we are just now waking up to the higher truths associated with energy exchange and the infinite abundance of energy.
Mhm.
So, and we're applying that as we understand it to monetary forms of exchange, because that's not been our linear perspective of abundance.
Yes.
I have X amount of dollars or gold or silver, and now I can expand that to like all forms of abundance, abundance of happiness or abundance of friends or houses, all kinds of physical and non-physical things.
Right.
And we're still relating that to energy. But as we expand into the galactic realm, we start realizing now we're talking about a whole new form of abundance and energy exchange. And we're understanding that actually what our future is going to be in terms of abundance is no longer even energy exchange, because we become more and more connected to the infinite abundance and supply that comes through our connection with all that is. So the new form of abundance, we're not there yet. This is the juice.
Right.
It's about the expansion of perspective. So in other words, the richest people will be those with the greatest perspectives, the most perspective to share and offer. The most abundance is based on how much perspective you have to share and contribute. That is the new wealth. It's not here yet. It is already here, but it's not how we're operating yet. But you can understand on this conversation, we are incredibly wealthy here, like beyond measurable wealth with the three of us and all those participating. That will be the new wealth. We're looking at least 2035 to 2045 for that to become a new measurement. But that is where we're going when you talk about abundance and prosperity, and that is meaty, juicy stuff.
It's very exciting, right, Elizabeth?
Yes, that's exciting.
I'd love to add to it. It's all true. What you're saying, Lori, it's true. And to add to it, part of it, I think, too, is that then we're watching the crumbling, we're watching the end of these fields of limitation that have made humans think that they're so separate. Separate from all kingdoms, separate from our Gaia, Mother Earth.
Separate from God, separate from energy, separate from source, all of it. That's the biggest limiter. I agree. Totally.
Yeah. And there's very specific things that humans have been programmed to believe that cause that to be very strong, like the money piece, valuing things according to money. That's false value. It's not real. Valuing, worrying about the future and the past all the time. That's not real. You can't do anything in the future or past. The fear of death. That's a big one. That separates us so big time from the universe.
And I would add to that in the old paradigm, we have been manipulated by with the power of that fear. So that fear of death and disease and poverty and lack has been used to manipulate and control us. So part of elevating out of the limited consciousness and expanding into global and galactic and universal in consciousness is transcending those fears. It's that those fears have to be, it's not like they have to be transcended. That's the best way to say it.
Yeah, I think we're trying to magnify the energy and power of the limitless field. We're all talking about the source field here, where everything's already been and already, it's all one thing. Past, present, future, all possibilities, all energy, it's all one. And that's that wealth of perspective there. When you're conscious of that oneness and you're living it and you've embodied it, that affects your culture. So how do we get to changing things faster? That's what
That's a great next question, Elizabeth. How do we change it? Because we've come a long way, right? We all started with, okay, we have to heal ourselves in order to heal the planet, and we all understand that this is it, right? And so our goal now is to say, okay, yes, and we have some of those things, and they come up, and we continue to work through them, but it's almost working on that larger expansion piece that's now here for us to do. So how do we do that? How do we move our consciousness from looking always at the past and the hurts and the traumas and all that, and getting caught in the limitations that you kind of get dragged into many times when we're thinking always about those things? How do we create in the new consciousness? How do we move ourselves in that direction?
Well, I think one of the most important factors is what you've just named, healing trauma. Here we've got all this built up trauma. That's what makes people feel separate. That's what builds all that ego up. That's what creates judgment, expectations, attachments, resistance. That's egoic structure. Trauma creates that. Trauma that's even, some of it's not even yours. Some of it's ancestral and written in our epigenetics. So healing trauma is the number one way. If you want to feel more oneness, expansiveness, there's many, many ways. But being able to do proper emotional, physical, mental processing of our trauma and then keeping that up, that doesn't mean trauma is going to stop. That means that you'll be in upkeep mode and you don't have to continue to let that trauma build up anymore. And I think once that's clean and clear, discernment comes online. Discernment is the opposite of judgment. Judgment is discernment run through your ego and your trauma. And so then we go into merging with people who have cleaned up their trauma, making mergers with one another, whether they're temporary or long-term. This is a merger. And energetically, us three and everyone on the call, we're creating something brand new. It might last a few hours, but hey, the repercussions are truly quantum level repercussions. We're putting information out there in a certain way that's it's creating a butterfly effect, which is a real thing. So, the entanglement piece, the quantum entanglement, all that is proving to us that we're all one. That's just the science behind oneness is all. And the brain mind likes to know that stuff.
Yes. You and I've had this conversation all three of us have had this conversation, this delicate balance we have between the mind, the heart, the spirit, with our cosmic selves, our souls, all of those aspects having to come online and together. And that's how we move forward. So the question for people is, what's keeping you from bringing it all in oneness, your own oneness first, of course, because then you're able to expand out more and connect with others even greater than you are now, even currently as we are, right? So it's the objective. But I want to know, both of you talk about DNA more than I do. I don't talk a lot about it. It's not my area of expertise. So I would love it if you would talk. I know, Lori, I saw something of yours recently where you were talking about the expanded DNA and how that plays. So I know the two of you talk about the importance. So I would love it if you would take what you know and just bring it all together with what we've been talking about. What's most important for us to focus on with regard to the DNA and our galactic oneness and all that we've talked about? What do we do? What does it mean?
Well,
I know.
One of the first
things, give it to me in a soundbite like this, please.
Really? Seriously? Impossible with me.
Just take your most favorite part, Lori. Tell us your favorite part that we need to know.
I mean, I don't even know how to do that with the DNA. It's too much. You have to understand that all your traumas and storylines and dis-ease is carried in the first two strands of DNA. That's typically linked to your ancestors and your past previous lifetimes and the crap you carried into this lifetime to clean up. That's the first thing. Any form of really, really good high vibe consciousness clearing and healing can help you with that.
Right.
By the way, it will be linked in directly with what your animals experience and your children and your family members. So you
True.
share experiences to help transcend them. To the degree that you get with someone who's really high consciousness, you can transcend them for generations. You can do the work and the clearing for generations. That's the first snippet of that. That doesn't go nearly deep enough, but that's important to understand. And then as you do that, you get certain access to other strands of DNA. A lot of people are very interested in activating their dormant DNA, but they don't quite understand that to the degree that you can activate DNA, you're going to be equally burdened, so to speak, with clearing crap for others too. Because the more your gifts open, the more crap you're clearing for the collective. So, but those other 10 strands are basically light encoded frequencies and pattern encoded with sacred geometrical patterns. And then there's gifts of consciousness hidden and embedded in there that get to be activated, but only as you can attune to them and awaken them, and only in accordance with the degree of consciousness, you can say integrity, vibrational match and alignment that you have. And I've learned this, okay, I could go on, but anyway, that's a starter. Oh my goodness, do you know that this light just fell? The light.
Bringing in the light.
Light is falling. Bringing in the light.
It's a sign. All right, Elizabeth, your thoughts on DNA and the role it's playing and where we're going and what we're doing and how we're getting there.
DNA is so cool. I mean, again, this is something Lori and I love, and we could talk for hours and hours about it. I think, okay, so DNA, first off, it's not just one dimension. And I think one of the most important things to clarify to people is that the fifth dimension, for example, didn't go anywhere.
Right.
We've always had access to it. How do we know that? Because we have physical attributes, literally, that show us in a microscope that we have access to these dimensions. For example, the brain creates literally 12 dimensions of structure, literally. That means the brain is capable of perceiving all 12 dimensions. That's just the brain. We have 3 brains, brain, heart, and gut. We have neurons in all of those brains. They make structures on all those dimensions. The dimensions are a full body experience. And through the cleaning up of the crap, as Lori's pointing out, you access more. It's all there already. You don't have to go try to go there. You need to make room for it to be there for you because it's already there. So we're not escaping away to any dimensions here. And so that needs to be really important to humankind again, that we're accessing our full body capability. What's the greatest tool we have? It's not a microscope. It's not any machine that we've made. It's our bodies.
It's our consciousness.
It's consciousness, and then the consciousness comes through the physical form of the body, which is a multidimensional experience. That was why DNA was created in the first place, so we could play in all the dimensions. That's why. It's not more complicated than that. And the fact that human DNA is constantly evolving and changing, it's beautiful. So from here on out, can we make sure that the stories we're writing in our own DNA affect our families and our lineages in beautiful, positive ways? By just being aware of that simple fact, yeah, we can. So the importance of DNA, honestly, would take us days to talk about.
Okay, we don't have days on this particular show, but the most important thing for it, I mean, to me, is just summarizing what you said. I love this idea that we actually have the capability in our physical form to connect with multidimensional realities, because that is what we do, and people don't realize that they're even doing it, actually. And when you become more aware, you understand how to and what you're doing out there, and that actually it's really more, I want to use the word passive, but it's not quite that. I think that people have the idea that we're directing a whole lot more, but actually it changes when you're in other dimensions. It's not as controlled as what we do here in the third dimension, right? I pick up a pen, I picked it up, right? That's a controlled action. And things don't happen that way in the multi-dimension. They happen differently. And so there's more there. But the whole piece that always interests me, and I want both of you to just weigh in on it, but what's I hear a lot of, and I know in my own life happens, is that now with all of the energy that's coming in, it's almost like things are being activated, and we're not really exactly sure what is being activated, and we're having to align with it. So how do we deal with these changing times and the changing energies? Like we have ideas, but I don't really actually believe we really know. I think we know, just like you said, there's so much about DNA to know. I think that with all the energies coming in, like we all have a little piece, right? And there's a lot of things happening. So how should people kind of go into this time? What are we looking for? What should we notice? How do we integrate it? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first, I would say there's a lot more that we know. What we don't know is what's been unknown to us. But we know a lot more than we realize. The reason I would say that is because we're now shifting into a reality where conscious consent is more and more relevant. So in other words, in the lower vibratory ranges, conscious consent is not necessarily required, because everything is governed by sacred contracts and agreements that we make prior to incarnation. We make them with ourselves and with one another and with our own source. And so we're governed by those more. And so we don't have as much conscious consent. The concept is, do you have free will or don't you? And the joke is, well, depends on what will you think is yours and what will you're aligning, because ultimately everything is the will of the creator of all that is, and we're operating as that consciously or unconsciously. Okay, nonetheless, as we become more and more conscious, and as we elevate into our frequency into higher realms of consciousness, we must more and more take full and complete conscious consent and authority, because we're clearing out patterns and records in the DNA that we've been unconscious of. We're clearing out agreements and contracts, etc., that we were unconscious of. We're clearing out records and the realms of the Akash that we were unconscious of. We're clearing our own karma, which is unfinished business that we've been unconscious of. Now, in order to clear all that out, we have to become conscious. Right. Now, in order to do anything from that space, we actually have to be more and more conscious, and therefore conscious consent is the new name of the game. But in the lower realms, there is no conscious consent, so to speak. So we actually know a lot more than we realize, because everything that's happening here, in fact, whenever I'm doing healing, whenever I'm doing channeling, whenever I'm working with a group, everything that I'm doing, it sometimes even sounds like I'm a little verbatim, like ad nauseum, but it's because the higher realms, so to speak, which are still governing us on a 6-dimensional frequency, we still have universal laws, which we can move beyond those too, but those govern us to help us to have universal agreements, so to speak, because now we're transcending our lower consciousness. So there's still a lot that we know, because we have to do everything in a conscious, consenting way. I hope that makes sense.
I'd like to add that where are we? Well, I always joke around with my husband that, well, today we're in a new place in space. There's so much going on. There's the beauty of the orbits that happen at every level of reality, from the atomic to the cosmological, to the galactic. Everything's orbiting, everything's moving through this very beautiful plan that's part of the source plan. And the earth is one of the most important players in all of this. Gaia's taking us on a ride, and we're meant to be in harmony with her. So she's playing her cards in such a way that she's taking us into dimensions far, far before we're probably even aware or ready. She's opening the gates for us to be more conscious at the very highest levels of dimension. It's her who's embodying these dimensions first. And for us to be willing and conscious enough to go through those gates, well, that's the challenge. That's the challenge. So what are we going to notice? Well, we're going to notice all kinds of interesting, strange things. It's everything from really simple things like meditation being easier. Hey, that's great. To emotional processing being easier. And then big, massive breakthroughs like first contact. You know, how do you know you've popped through a certain dimension? Well, you're going to have contact. You're going to have contact with that dimension. It's going to be new. Everybody's journey into dimensions is going to be unique. No two journeys are the same. And so it's difficult for me to say what to look for, because everyone's going to have such a unique personal experience. Why is that? Because they're an individuated part of the source field. The source field, it's an illusion that you're an individual, but you're yet still an individuated part of the source field, feeding back all that information that you're learning about what it takes as Elizabeth or Lori or Gabrielle to go through to these dimensions. Each person's perspective is incredibly important to that. That's why each life, each experience, each facet has a place. And it's important to the larger picture of that feedback of discovering what's possible. So I think, you know, what can you look for? More ease and grace. And those big, huge signposts of fear, of big challenges and problems, being very clear in front of you. Oh, this is the next thing that's going to advance me farther. And not us shying away from that anymore. Oh, this is the next big thing. We have to clean up the plastic on the planet, you know, or as an individual having a challenge or an issue. Okay, this is here for me to advance farther, to continue to feed back to the source field about my experience. And that's for all of us. And Gaia's taking us with her on that journey. We made an agreement that we're all becoming more conscious of with Gaia, to do this with her, not alone, not by ourselves, but with her, in tandem with everyone else on the planet, the plants and animals too, like Lori said, and the crystal beings too. So it's really kind of cool. I think it's quite special, but what to expect? Well, that's the wild part. Each person's going to expect something very different. And I couldn't tell you a general way of what to expect, what's coming.
I want to say that, to me, two of the most important things that we could be doing right now, is there a weird echo? No? Is number one, being on calls like this, even if you're really silent, because the energy on this call is really high frequency. It's quite beautiful. Like, there's a part of me that just wants to check out and be in it because it's so beautiful from our collective group. And I mean, just from being with such high vibe beings, right? Whenever you can put yourself in a circle, a call, a webinar, a group like this, a meditation room, even a yoga room, any form of high frequency energy, you're going to be elevating your frequency and rising with Mother Earth, right? I mean, being in nature is awesome, but when you're in a collective group, what happens is the collective together elevates. And
right.
That's a really important thing to do. And the other thing I was going to say that's just so important is understanding the difference between working with energy and transforming energy, and the difference between transforming consciousness. Because from a lot of people. They can come and sit in rooms like this, or they can go to yoga, or they can play singing bowls or crystal bowls, and all of that is beautiful, and that's just what I said just to do, and it is important, but it is not the same thing as working with your consciousness, which means judgments, points of view, perspectives, beliefs, belief systems, every form of mental and emotional entanglement that entangles you into 3D. That stuff is gnarly, and that's the hard work. That's the hard work. It's easy to sit in a room and listen and go into blissful states and be part of energy circles and meditation circles and do energy healing and move energy. But if you're not changing perspectives to align with higher, lighter, clearer, pure, divine perspectives, you're still going to be having struggles that are just not for your, not generally enjoyable. And those are resistances and entanglements that hook you into the old paradigm, in my opinion. So,
I agree with that opinion.
Me too.
I think that what's happening.
Nice. Feels good. But, can I just make another, I don't mean to cut that off, but since we're in discussion, I want to say something else. Agreement is one of the most important things you can offer right now, but please understand what I mean about agreement. Agreement is the absence of resistance. Not like, oh, I agree with your point of view. Agreement is, yes. Agreement is the feminine energy, which is what we're calling forward here, which is what humanity needs for liberation. So agreement is, yeah, gotcha. And, because even if you disagree, agreement will look like that. And what about this? And, yes, and. So the masculine energy that we're subsisting on, which is dry, which is killing us, is resistance, struggle, debate, argument. There's no agreement in just masculine energy. So even if you don't agree with a perspective, agreement is feminine energy. Yes. Okay, got it. And that's what feels so good. That's what everyone is seeking right now. It's not agreement of points of view necessarily. It's that feminine energy, which is so beautiful when the three of us are here, I think. Like we're bringing it.
It's acceptance. I mean, agreement and acceptance, I think it's similar. And that it's the acceptance that we can all actually have completely different points of view, actually, or understandings, but that it can all be just fine. It's correct. It's good. It means something. I mean, that this is, I think, the broader definition of how do you get along. It's not that you have to agree with me or that I have to agree with you. But it resonates for me, and I'm good with that. And I don't have to prove through ego that I'm right. Who cares? It's right for me in this moment, because there's one thing I've learned, and I know both of you, because we've talked about it, at other times, that right now, what we understand to be true is going to change in 5 more minutes when we get a download and you go, oh my God, I have a new perspective, which brings us back to the beginning of what you said, Lori, about expanding our perspective, right? And as soon as we do that and we get that next piece, then suddenly you see those same words and that all those things, but in a completely different way. Emotions are completely different. And when we talk about moving ourselves to the higher consciousness, it's gaining that whole different perspective from the multidimension, from the galactic, from the universal knowledge, from all of those places. And we're bringing that into our current life and seeing what's around us in a whole new light, where it's not devastating anymore. I think this is the part for me lately, is realizing that, like, that saying, this too shall pass. I never use that saying, but I've come to realize just what that actually means. Like, it's allow it to play out. Ask what you need to do to move through it, or to, align with what you need to align with. The other day I was, it came back to me, something, we've all known forever and ever, calling in divine intervention, right? And I started singing A, B, C, D, E, because that's so basic. But yet you have to remember that as we progress, we gain a new understanding, like, oh my goodness, I just need to not control it, just allow what needs to happen to come in. And that's the opening, right? So we all know that somebody's quoting a Billy Joel song. Anyway, see, it says you can't go the distance with too much resistance.
You know what grace is?
The matter I trust.
I got this as a direct download from Source.
Go ahead.
You know what grace is? I want to know. I want people to plug in, what is grace?
What is grace? That's the question. Lori's posing it to the audience.
Let Elizabeth share whatever Elizabeth wants to share, because I've been talking a long time. And then I give the answer of what is grace.
I think, yes, you should answer that. I want to magnify something you said, if I may, Lori, about the entanglement and resistance itself being an aspect of egoic structure, and that both masculine and feminine obviously can be in resistance, right? But resistance is a precious thing, and so is all that egoic structure and all the judgment, all the attachments, all of that. It's all very precious, because if you're conscious and you're being aware of, and this is the importance of building consciousness, when you're aware of the resistance, like, wow, okay, I'm resisting this in my body, then what it's doing is it's showing you, oh, there's some structure there. There's some entanglement there. There's trauma there. Or if you're afraid, or if you are attached to something, attached to an outcome that doesn't show up the way you thought it would, and you get disappointed, it's pinging you. It's showing you where the structure is. Formlessness is where we're needing to go. In that formlessness, there's no resistance to everyone having the place and the position and the perspective that they have. You don't get pinged anymore by everyone having a position. You don't feel like you have to prove anything anymore, because it's not pulling out any of the egoic structure for you to look at, because then you've already dealt with it. So being able to see and feel the structure in your own self, to notice those negative thoughts and those judgments, that's huge. Because now you've seen, oh, this is the structure I'm unraveling in order to access more dimensions, in order to access more light. And that light, well, it's intelligent, and it is grace. So that's what I wanted to magnify, is this stuff's precious stuff. As someone said, if you want to get rid of your resistance, go to a sound healer. That's temporary. That's temporary. Don't bypass your troubles. Don't bypass your ego. Don't bypass it. Go in and get to know it and dig it up and really help it dissolve. It's just consciousness under pressure. That's all ego is. It's consciousness under pressure. Resistance is consciousness being oppressed and pressurized by trauma and all that stuff. And that's what we're doing. We're releasing pressure. There's no pressure between us on this call. There's no consciousness under pressure. It feels like fluidity. It feels like light moving through all of us. It's way beyond any one individual's light. It's the combination, and suddenly, blam, here we have 12 dimensions of frequency available by us being here together now. So that's what I wanted to magnify in what Lori was saying, and just elevate it, so people could notice that we don't want to bypass the resistance. We want to get to know it and go into it.
Yeah.
And understanding, though, what that feels like, even in the moment, even what people are feeling. If you were to close your eyes and just allow the light energy and the information, the frequency to just come within your energetic field and within your heart, then you understand what that lack of resistance feels like.
That's why these circles are so blissful.
Yeah, because you get to feel it. And my thought is that the more that you feel that, the easier it is to replicate it on your own, because you know what it feels like. Your DNA, your cells, your environment, all of it, you know when it feels off and when you're out of alignment with it, and then what you need to do to help yourself get back in. It brings more recognition to what's happening for you. I mean, part of consciousness is being conscious of what's happening within your own sphere of influence and knowing what's happening for you, and that you can do things to help bring yourself back into divine alignment, because that's really what we're talking about, is being in that divine alignment. That's grace to me, is being in divine alignment. When things just happen, I like to think of it like when people will say, oh, it was like magic, or it was a miracle, I think to myself, only because you didn't understand how you did it. When you are in a state of grace, you know that that's the norm, right? Most of the time, that's just because you're in divine alignment and you're in divine flow. So David says, grace is grease on the flywheel. And then Anat says, grace is like a default space between the thoughts, the judgments, the emotions, the known, the unknown, and the patterns. I like that. A sound healer helps ease, oh, we did that one, make it easier to release. Yes. I saw somebody else. Oh, grace can be the absence of ego. So we've gotten some great responses, everyone.
I love that. I love grace is like a default space.
That's cool.
Yes, grace is. Go ahead.
Love grace is allowance. From Megan, I thought that's really, really true. To me, grace, this is what I got as a download from. I always am asking for information and consciousness from creators' consciousness. Make my consciousness creators. And what I've been shared with is grace is the absence of resistance. We were talking about resistance. And I think it was Inar said resistance is masculine energy. And what I would say is that by default, feminine energy is non-resistance, because feminine energy is all that is. It just is. It just is. It's not resisting anything. It just is. And masculine energy is the force of creation. It's action. It's creation. It is doing. So when the two are working together, the masculine energy uses all that is to create. The two are required together. But if there's a resistance, this force of creation is resisting all that is. Why? The two are meant to work in collaboration together. That is when someone was referring to, someone said something so beautiful in there about how when things come together, I don't know who that was who said that. You read it. It was so beautiful. It's so true. It's like, oh,
it's
God,
like a default space.
Well, Elizabeth was saying something about it. I don't remember the exact.
I know, it's all out there. I mean, everybody gave great answers. So thank you for the answers. That and I think that we missed
when you get out of your own way. It's true.
Yes,
you get out
exactly
of the way.
True.
You get
Grace
out of
is beautifully releasing.
I mean, one thing you said too, Gabrielle, you said something about when people create miracles. Well, to me, that's like you're using your consciousness to create. You're out of your own resistance.
Right.
You're allowing all that is to be organized in such a way. The laws of the universe will bring it together, like the law of synchronicity synchronizes, the law of creation creates, the law of radiation radiates out, the law of circulation circulates it around, the law of attraction attracts it back. I mean, all of that is happening. You know, there's more in there, but that's just creation. It's just the way it's meant to be. But we've been so out of alignment with all that is that too much over masculinization in our reality without really being in harmony with all this feminine of what is.
You know, I wanted to say,
I don't know how we got on that, but anyway.
I want to talk about oneness and energy and masculine and feminine, okay? Because my feeling on it is that we're evolving to the next space, which is that there isn't just a masculine and a feminine anymore. We move into the space of oneness. And that's how we're moving into those higher realms. It isn't about the masculine and feminine. So while that's how the 3D is operated, where it's that resistance, push, pull parts, and that we have to bring people into balance there, I think that for me, I'm starting to feel like, okay, we brought that as far as maybe we need to. If we were to put our consciousness on the oneness aspect, we aren't creating the division of one side is this and one side is that. More that in oneness, we aren't in resistance. We're focused on bringing our wholeness together, which is not male or female. Doesn't mean I give up my feminine. I'm really strong about wanting to stay female and being happy as a woman and all of those things. But on the higher realms and that connection, that's where I'm putting my consciousness more into that oneness energy. And that if there's any resistance, it doesn't matter what we label it, that's still resistance. And we still have to move through it in order for us to be able to open and expand our consciousness to what potentially is next available. Right? So I'm just basically changing the word.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. It's just that we're talking about how we're moving from third dimensional old paradigm into a new paradigm.
Exactly. That's what we're talking about.
It's not a linear thing, but oneness is the integration. You're absolutely right, of the masculine and the feminine, but the vast majority of humanity still doesn't even understand that masculine is not limited to a masculine body and feminine.
Thank you. Thank you for saying
body. And
yes,
we're talking
because
about
when I read the question earlier, it was saying, the way I read it was that it was saying that it's masculine, resistance is masculine. And what I'm wanting to bring out to everybody is we're not saying that. We're just saying that in general, it doesn't matter what we label it, right? It's that if you have resistance or you feel like you're acting out of ego, or feeling like the victim, like things are always happening to me, or I have to take on stuff for other people or the collective, or whatever it is that we're feeling, right? That's the issue that you need to deal with, the fact that it's triggering that within you, that you are working on releasing it or healing it and moving through it, because that part will keep you stuck in that energy where it does feel like that all the time, right?
Yeah.
If I may, I'd like to bring up the difference between equality and equanimity, because there's two very big different concepts there, which we're kind of alluding to.
Okay.
The masculine and feminine equality is trying to put a whole bunch of people who are incredibly different, a whole lot of souls, a whole lot of bodies into a situation and saying that they're all equal when they're not. They're different. Right. Every single individual is incredibly unique in every way. Soul level history, DNA, all of it, all the above. Equanimity says all of that has a place. All of you have a place. You're perfect, just like you are. You all have a place. All of your balance, all of your imbalances, all of the consciousness you bring to the table, all of what you know and what you don't know, it all has a place. So there's a big difference. We're moving away from trying to force equality into us finally getting this concept of equanimity, which has been there the whole time. The source field creates equanimity. It's all in equanimity. I have infinite value. Lori has infinite value. Gabrielle has infinite value. Every single person's experiences have infinite value. That is equanimity. And finally, when we're getting to a global consciousness level as a species that this equanimity exists, are we going to finally end all the fighting between us and the resistance of other people's perspectives? It'll end because equanimity will be in place. That's awesome.
One thing, I love you so much, Elizabeth. I love that you just brought that up. And I have to add one more thing.
Please.
Beyond equanimity is magnanimity. And magnanimity is a full, whole, and complete acceptance and love for all, regardless of anything. So right now, in the third dimensional paradigm, people are struggling for equality. Mm-hmm. And this isn't a false illusion, because of course there is equality, but there is individuality. And that the equality with individuality is equanimity, in a sense, right? This is like what you're saying, in a sense, or I'm just adding additional perspective, because I totally love what you said. But ultimately, in that unified field, as we more and more align with that, we have this magnanimity, which is like a whole and complete acceptance and love, regardless of whether there's like. Magnanimity is, I can love you as all that is without even necessarily liking you. I have the capacity to love without necessarily wanting or desiring that to be part of my individuated experience. It's the recognition of the whole, the love of the divine is flowing in and through me and around me for all that is. So I think that's just a beautiful compliment.
I think that's brilliant. Exactly. No more.
Yes. All good. So we have a question from Janet. She says, where does the negative energy fit in this? Is it on its way out with magnanimity? I cannot even say it. And does equanimity mean we can value the gifts each person brings to the table by putting ego aside?
Well, yes. So we're not tossing out the dark, y'all. Look, the dark and the shadow are huge, massive gifts. If you go in and you merge with a layer of dark, you're always going to find light. The fact is that the idea that there's division and that there's dark and evil and density versus anything, formlessness, light, whatever, that's an illusion. Everything's made of light. If you go down to the quantum level of any dark energy whatsoever, you're going to find light. There has to be black holes in place to keep galaxies intact. Black holes aren't evil. Yeah, they gobble up all kinds of stuff, sure. Yeah, you're not going to last long if you get close, sure. But all of this is all made of light. And so at the level of magnanimity, at that
we'll have an instruction course after on how to say the word.
Right.
At that level, what we're trying to say, what we're trying to point out is that unconditional love has no conditions. That when we go into any density, any dark energy, which is again just consciousness under pressure, that you're going to always recognize that there's light at the basis of it. It doesn't mean you have to like it or include it in your life. It doesn't mean you got to put up with it. It means that you're always going to be aware of that it's all made of light. It's all included in the source field. This is the tough part about shadow work. And this is where we're headed. If we're going to have finally global peace and galactic peace, we have to be able to say, deal with beings that we might call dark, evil, whatever, and know, you know what? They're made of source light just like me. There's not really any difference at that level between us. And that's hard because we go through a lot of suffering and we've been through a lot of suffering, but that's where we're heading. That's where we're heading.
I also want to say something about the whole negativity and the shadow work, because it's so relevant right now. I just recently did a video and it's not on my YouTube yet actually, but I did an interview with someone else, and it will be on my YouTube, about the three black holes of consciousness, the three traps. And this is juicy stuff. So the first one is law of attraction movement. And it's not that it's untrue or inaccurate. It's that it does seem to promote a kind of spiritual bypassing. And essentially the trap of law of attraction is that somehow you're just supposed to pretend the negativity is not there, or focus only on the positive, and you will find yourself doing a kind of spiritual bypassing there. And if you don't love the negativity, or somehow integrate or unify with it, or somehow work with it, and that includes the shadow aspect that you were just referring to, it will become a trap. You find yourself at a dead end. And these show up in the universe, by the way, as black holes, energetic black holes. So, I mean, that's a reflection energy. So the other thing that's relevant is the second trap, which is this whole conspiracy, which conspiracy is not a theory. And this whole, dark, negative alien agenda, dark stuff that nobody wants to look at, the stuff we're in denial, all that, our shadow as it is appears in the collective. Massive conspiracy, massive cover-up, massive dark global agenda, which is real and evil and hidden in our own government, our own organized religion, our own schooling systems, our banking institutions, it's everywhere. It's infiltrated in the lower realms on all levels and layers, and nobody wants to look at it. But if you then just start looking at it, you get trapped in there because it's so dark and evil, and it's full of black magic and pornography, sexual addiction, child drug trafficking, sex trafficking. I mean, stuff nobody wants to look at. And then when we do, we get trapped in there because it's so dark and evil. And we have to get through there. And the third trap is we do have to get through it. We can't find our way to full unity and oneness unless we're willing to work with our shadow and embrace these things. And I mean, I just said words that most people just don't even want to hear. I can feel the energy. I can feel how this energy in this group even just got not as pure, right? But we'll change it. We'll shift it very quickly. But the third trap is escapism, which often is reflected as false galactic beings, Ashtar command. It's like, now I want to escape. So I'm going to have this fake relationship with not real intergalactics presenting as real. And that's a trap because I'm still playing in a game of escapism and I don't really know it. And I have no discernment. I haven't developed discernment yet. And I haven't developed the fortitude and the strength to really work with the shadow. I'm just trying to escape it. And these traps, in order to really unify and really come to the higher realms, it's like what Elizabeth said, we have to work with the shadow. We have to be willing to embrace the shadow within us. We have to be willing to acknowledge that as a creator of all that is, we co-created that. We played with it. We played some role. We participated. Some aspect of it exists within us. Some fear, some illusion, some program, some part of it. And until we transcend it, this is the ultimate freedom and liberation of humanity.
Nailed it.
Really stuff
Another big topic. I mean it. This piece, that heavy energy is that we have this idea that it's all bad. And one of the things that I get a lot from people is that nobody wants to hear that they were ever bad in a past life or whatever. And I'm always like, well, we are here because we've played all roles and we're here to balance them out and come out again into that oneness. So there's no possible way I was always awesome. And I'm okay with that. See, but that's what we're talking about is that, you know what, you just have to come to the realization that that's all part. There's all sides and we all play all sides. Our soul plays all sides. And then it's about integrating them and bringing them back into that wholeness and that not having the separation that causes and healing the traumas that those experiences created within our own energetic field and our own soul's consciousness. So it all does come back to that perfect circle of where, we're bringing it all around and illuminating it right now for everybody so that you understand that there isn't any judgment. The judgment comes from what you've been told or your beliefs or that it didn't go so well when you had that experience, right? So it must be bad. And that's part of what you are releasing as far as it's not resistance, but it's definitely a wedge that we create, in our own understanding of what's happening and what's good and all of this stuff. Self-mastery isn't about just being all good. It's about just bringing ourselves back into wholeness and reconnecting with the highest aspect of ourself. It isn't a judgment, good, bad, or other. And I think that's what's really important. And those scary beings, gosh, I was just thinking as you were talking, Lori, that in one of my other interviews, we talked about the false beings and that we do need this discernment and the gut and the knowledge and the understanding of what that means when we are connecting to other dimensions, etc. So how would people go about that? I guess I'm looking for a how here. How would they know if they're connecting with something that's an illusion or something that is inherently not in their best good? I mean, it always will turn around to their best good, but maybe they don't have to go down that black hole.
I want to say you brought up so many things in there. Like, for example, one is developing the discernment. And I think this is like such a big, juicy piece. And then the other things like, how do you work with shadow and how do you integrate it? And then the other is, how do you know when you're dealing with something that's maybe to your detriment? So those are three different meaty, juicy things. And I'm going to let Elizabeth discuss how to deal with the shadow because she's really good at it. I do it too. But I just want to say that humanity right now doesn't even have enough discernment to be able to tell that Dick Cheney is a dick with no heart. I mean, I don't understand that. I don't understand that basic thing. Like, if you don't have enough discernment to understand that the pharmaceutical drug company is self-serving, brainwashing you, telling you, call your doctor, and then they go to the doctor and brainwash him, and that they own the exact institutions that the doctor was trained in. Like, this is a problem for us. We don't have the most basic fundamental level of discernment. We can't tell. We don't seem to know the truth that 9/11 was a conspiracy. Like, the facts are there, but people don't want to face that because they're still wired into denial and ignorance. And that's not that we are a stupid race. We have been manipulated and we have allowed that to exist because we've been unwilling to look at our shadows. So developing discernment means you have to go into the shadow aspects of this and be willing to look in the crevices and the monsters under the the bed and the shadow in the carpet and sweep out. And even like for me today, I was dealing with a masculine energy who's like, well, let's just get over it. Like, well, no, that's not. We don't just pretend something didn't happen that did and pretend like it never happened. No, we have to actually be willing to look at our shadows. So anyway, that's part of how we develop the discernment, and how you know that you're dealing with something is that it's going to hurt. It's going to be yucky. It's going to be icky. It's going to feel painful. It's going to feel disgusting. It's going to trigger you. It's going to piss you off. It's going to push your buttons. And it's not that you have to dive into it. It's that you have to merge and unify with it. It's that you have to be willing to say, what is it within me that's reacting, resisting, judging? What is it that is it within me that created this, or what part of me? What you have to play with it and dance with it in non-resistance.
Release your fear about it. I mean, that's the other part. It scares people.
You want to go into the fear, Gabrielle. You don't want to release it. You want to go into it so that you can dissolve the power it has over you. You merge with fear so that it no longer has power over you. And the discerning part, people aren't using their whole body. They keep trying to use their brain mind. You have a whole body that can help you out. You've got a brain, a heart, and a gut that can see, feel, and know the truth. Don't just keep trying to depend on your brain. It'll take you in circles. Feel it, and know it in your gut. Ask your body, ask your heart and your gut. I train people to discern properly using their body. It's consciousness through the body that will help you discern that. Your heart's going to tell you, and your gut's going to tell you if your brain isn't so sure. And as a seer, by the way, I see all this stuff doesn't mean that I know the truth. I need to feel it, and I need to know it in my gut in order to say to somebody, this is true. Just because it looks like an angel doesn't mean it's an angel. I've already been through this multiple times in my own life and all the crap I went through. If only I had been able to feel and know deep in my own body, then I wouldn't have gone through that trouble. But I didn't. That's what I realized. Wow, I'm really not discerning. I just got into all kinds of trouble. And when it comes to dealing with shadow, Lori's correct. You merge with it. You welcome it fully until you find the gift on the other side. You welcome it so fully into your body. You process by welcoming so fully the emotions that don't feel good until you find the other side. And that is when all that fear has no more power over you. The density doesn't have power over you anymore. And you know what happens? All that stuff dissolves. Demons dissolve into light because
they completely transform. They transform.
Yeah, it all transforms. It's amazing. It's amazing. And
I love you so much, Elizabeth. I love everything you always share. And I just want to say something else, because what's happening is everybody's becoming more sensitive, you know? And so what you have is like all this energy bouncing around everywhere. And those of us who are really empathic, because we're opening and accessing more of this, the natural response of the empath is like, oh, that's energy I don't like, and I don't want to deal with it. And so a lot of empaths, either they become more reclusive or seclusive, or else they're always constantly trying to transform energy. And the truth ultimately is that it's almost like you just have to get used to this, embracing it as if it's in your field. You embrace it and own it as yours.
Yeah. And the 3 traps you mentioned, Lori, are absolutely vitally important. Absolutely vitally important for us to be conscious of those 3 traps. I can't wait to see that interview.
The 3rd trap is the hardest.
It is the hardest. You're right. It is.
The 2nd trap is the darkest. The 3rd trap is the hardest.
It's true.
All I can say, because you only know how I got through that. I never had to really make my way through that trap, because I'm a truther through and through. So the 3rd trap couldn't trap me. It couldn't trap me, because at the core of who I am not good with lies. And so what would happen was the third trap will try to lie and deceive you. That's what it does. It gives you butterflies and roses all day long. It'll tell you you're on a spaceship somewhere, and it will fulfill your dreams in a mental capacity, even in an energetic capacity. But then when you come out into the real world, you're still navigating through fear. You're still in fear. You're still afraid that you're still in anxiety, and you're still lonely and isolated. That's how you know you're in the third trap, because the only way you can get happy is if you close your eyes, get in bliss state. You're in escapism, and you're being fed lies and manipulation like, oh, butterflies and roses, everything is good. But no, when you enter in the world, you're still afraid. You still don't know how to navigate people. You're in this constant state of anxiety. The way that I didn't get caught in that was because I just wanted the truth. I wasn't willing to just be lied to, because it's a trap for escapists. It's escapism.
Yeah.
It's the third dimensional programming.
When I have somebody, no, it's more than that, because what it is, okay, you've gotten through the first 2 traps, and now we just have to give you all your wishes fulfilled, but only in this reality, in your little hologram, not in the whole of reality, not in all of reality. So the way that I learned about this trap really was, first I started asking, how come Ashtar Command never came to me? And then the laws of the universe said, well, the law of truth came in and said, well, you won't tolerate that bullshit. And then when I was around other people talking about Ashtar Command, my body would start going into these convulsions, like resistance, like the law of truth would want to come through and be, that's a lie. That's not true. That's not true. And I'd be like, whoa, you can't do that. I live in a world where you're not allowed to do that. So the law of truth would withhold. Okay, I won't do it, but I'm telling you, that's a lie. And so my body would start going into these, like, that's a lie. My foot would be shaking. Like, they can't contain the fact that it's a lie. This is how my body reacts to lies. I don't handle them very well. But I would know, because somebody's sitting there talking about Ashtar Command like it's real. Okay, no, I'm not here to say, because some people have had beautiful experiences with Ashtar Command.
I was just going to say, but there are a lot of reality. I mean,
what's that?
Experiences that others don't have. And for each person that, like we talked about, fear is an illusion, right? So fear being an illusion, that may be the case, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't trigger people. It doesn't mean that it doesn't stop people in their tracks. It doesn't mean that for them, it's not real. It's that once you realize but you have to be in a different perspective to see fear and what it's triggering. As the same with, like, for myself, I don't resonate with the Ashtar Command at all. I never have. I don't have a lot of, I think, past experience, whatever, with that aspect. It's not really my ballywick. I'm more with the, let's say, the angel side or whatever. I'm not really with the space commands, etc. I'm not a warrior. That's not my lineage, right? And so I don't have any real resonance with it at all. Like, it doesn't even interest me. Right. I don't think there's anything anywhere out there where I've ever talked about it. Although I live with a person who, my husband is, totally warrior energy. So, that stuff interests him, but it doesn't to me. And that's really the thing that everybody has to understand. Whether, if you don't resonate with it, cool. That's good.
You're right. You're absolutely right. It's true. If you don't resonate with it, it's cool. But on the way of developing discernment and aligning with the higher consciousness, or the pure consciousness.
In discernment, what matters is that you're true to yourself and your own discernment, and not just listening to anything that you hear or anything that drops in. Yes, Elizabeth says yes. I mean, that's discernment. It's not just because Lori said it or Gabrielle said it or Elizabeth said it that it is gospel and it's true. That's our perspective, our understanding, and how we're seeing it. And wherever we are, it's going to be.
But you can also know that when you can start to feel into your own body about how you feel when you're getting an untruth. Because I was just demonstrating how my body responds when I'm getting an untruth. It just does not like it. There's a struggle with that. So everybody has some form of, that's what Elizabeth was saying earlier, in my words, she's saying, ask your body, because your body knows when you're being given something that is not aligned. And that's what you were saying.
That's very important. And
discernment piece.
Discernment is very key in being able to make it through all that's going on. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Let's be clear here, though. Fear is not an illusion. Fear is a frequency.
Yes, it is.
It's a frequency. It's all frequencies. Frequency takes form. There's nothing to be afraid of about fear. Fear is a clue. Fear is the signpost. You should go down that road so this stops having power over you. Fear is the signpost that guides you into the next level of advancement. I always like to say, destiny is both desire and fear, because you're going into places you haven't been before as a soul, as a person, or both. And so, for people I've been in that trap of escapism. And so Lori was able to not be in that trap. I'm actually glad that I have an experience of that trap. And she's absolutely correct. You feel completely separated. But what made me feel so separated was all that false light has mechanics. Those mechanics pet my ego. They pet my ego, and they said, "Oh, don't you want to save the world, Elizabeth?" Well, yeah. Don't you want to bring brand new special information that no one else has? Does that sound familiar? Special new information that no one else has. And boy,
I think I do that, but I don't think that's a fear program, right?
No. But the information that, say, we might be getting as we're bringing through higher levels of information and dimensions, and there's a big difference between going in and trying to use things in order to gain for myself, which is what I did, versus sharing so that I can help everybody. and sharing as much as possible, living it, sharing it, selfless giving, very different than what I was guided to do at the time that I was in my trap. I was guided to monetize it, to make it exclusive, to use energy instead of co-create with energy, instead of working with energy, right? So there's a big difference in that energetic feeling of, well, I'm going to use the golden ratio to heal you. Well, why not just celebrate the golden ratio that is there for us, that's always been there? You know, maybe the ancient Taoists didn't know about the golden ratio, and now we do. That's new information. But it's still there, it didn't go anywhere, and no one needs to use it. It's there to celebrate. Just like the DNA, we're getting to know the DNA better. That's new, fresh info, but we're not using it to manipulate. We're trying to help expand consciousness for humanity by bringing attention to it. You know, there's that slight difference. But that isolation, and also when you're trapped in any one of these three traps, you'll often find that the density, the darkness tends to get magnified. It starts to like populate your whole life like giant replicating bags of trash. And so that's another sign in your life. Wow, I feel like it's just continuing to pile up. You know, that kind of stuff requires payback. When I made an agreement with a being that I thought was an angel, and it wasn't, because I did not have good discernment.
Right.
And I was so arrogant, I thought I could see everything and have no limits and all that, and that I could know it all. Seeing and knowing are two different things. You know, then I thought, oh, I'm gonna be so awesome, I'm gonna help save the world, and I'm gonna make lots of money and all this stuff, and it was just all false. It's all false light. So the minute anything pets your ego and helps you to bliss out, and
that is such a key word. What you just
yeah,
said.
it'll just pet your ego. Yeah, that's how you know.
You're some kind of scientist on another ship somewhere, or if it tells you, oh, in another dimension, you're some goddess.
Yeah.
In the world, like when it starts telling you that stuff, but you come out of it and you're still living in a world that feels scary to you, and you're afraid about the future, and you're worried about where humanity's going, you haven't gotten out of that trap.
Yeah. Agreed.
And it's not that you won't have concerns for humanity. It's just that won't be your guiding force of your fear. Your guiding force will be love. Your guiding force will be joy. Your guiding force will be peace. Your guiding force will be happiness. Your guiding force will be service to the greater good.
And connection to the people.
Unification, yes. You will seek more unification in general, not less.
Yeah.
Like during my transformation, I remember my big dark night of the soul. I spent 2 years living in Maui. I didn't interact with anyone for 2 years. Nobody, practically nobody. I mean, a grocery store person once a week, you know what I mean? But really, I was alone for 2 years. And I was seeking that because I knew I had to find out who I was and what, my purpose was, my mission and all that stuff. And I needed that solitude and that seeking. And then the time after that was still a lot of isolation because I was discovering my frequency, my contribution, what I was in relationship to everything else. But the more unified I became, the more I was seeking companionship, relationship, unification with others, the less I was in a state of what is that word, imbalance within myself. The more I was stable within my own energy, the more I was looking to unify with others.
Yeah.
In the case, the more relationship matters, because now you understand who you are in relationship to anyone else and everything else. There's no more fear of entanglements, entrapments, and snarlments, etc. And the unification expands the greatness of who we are. So I find that's part of my journey, but I think that is a generalized truth in a sense, because you come out of fear. You're not in fear. You don't need the isolation to discover the greatness of who you are. You have that. You can take that any moment, at any time, by going into any form of meditation or unity with the earth or animal or anyone. You can do that anytime.
We're doing it now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's interesting here is with all that we've talked about, we're not actually talking about fear. And I want everybody to understand this, because I'm seeing the comments coming through. And so I would like to just add like the next piece of this. We're using the word fear because first, that's what most people understand. It's the easiest word we have to relate to what it is that we're actually talking about. But this isn't about fear. It is back to that piece that Lori was just talking about, which is we're all beacons of light. And as we bring ourselves together, we're able to hold more light. I always think of it like a colander or a sieve, like those wire mesh colanders, right? So if we're filled with holes and areas that have tears and we're hurt and in pain from whatever we're carrying around with us, we're not holding the light as strongly as we could. And so however people see that or understand that, fine. Those are just words, and that helps you to understand and put it in tangible boxes or whatever it is. But actually, and I think that what we are talking about and what you ladies have really broadly, I mean, I feel like we've gone from the universe and back, like we've been all over the place. But in essence, it is about being in resonance with your own heart and your own light and expanding that out from within yourself. I mean, that's a very simplistic thing. And there are many things that happen along the way that basically help us to do that to a greater degree. You know, things get triggered in order to bring light to it so that you can see it and realize, okay, that's all that is. And I'm going to do whatever type of healer that you are, or whatever practice you do in order to help yourself move through things, assimilate them, align with them, release, whatever it is that you're doing, right? And that's really
what you're saying too about this is like, one of the things I recently became aware of, I mean, I don't know how I wasn't aware of it before, is this word healer, because, you know, we're healers. All three of us are healers. We do it professionally. And, most people, when they get the word healer, they're, and so many people are starting to wake up now, you know, they perceive healer to be something's physically wrong with me. And they don't understand that a true healer, a gifted healer, you will work with them way before anything is ever physically wrong with you. The greatest gifts of the healing journey have nothing to do with something being physically wrong. If you're going to someone as a healer because something is physically wrong, you have let things get so out of alignment in your life, chances are, that you have not been cleaning up, right? Which Elizabeth said this earlier. A real healer, we're working with your consciousness to align your consciousness with the divine. So if you have money issues, relationship issues, those are not physical issues necessarily, although they could show up physically as a debt in your, debt, financial debt, or lack of money. But if you feel fear of money, that's an emotional or mental component. You may have lots of money and still be afraid, for example. Yes. Or, so I just think this is so important for people to understand, because healers, like when someone says, oh, I don't know what Ashtar command is. Okay, that's fine. You don't have to. But when you start working with the divine, you understand. If you want galactic consciousness, for example, which is where we started this conversation, what's, galactic consciousness? Well, that's part of accessing higher realms of consciousness. Healers help with that. I'm not just talking about energy healing Reiki, because that's to me, I'm a Reiki master. I love Reiki, but that's a very 4D kind of consciousness, because it's not necessarily working with higher consciousness that goes beyond fourth dimensional consciousness. If you want to expand into the higher realms, healers are the ones who help transform that for you and help you to transform that, because they're already in the higher consciousness. So it's
all true what you're saying.
I like to add to that I've been kind of trying to move the word holding out of my vocabulary a little bit because it implies some kind of structure, and and moving into radiance.
I like radiance.
So I've been telling people I'm going to radiate light on your situation or on you or whatever. What I'm doing then is actually a very physical movement. It's flow. It's what a good healer does. They're radiating light. They're drawing light out of you to help dissolve structures, to help you merge with fear so it doesn't have power over you anymore. And then the physicality of it changes too. So I like to imagine everybody as photon generators, as my friend Flower likes to say, because we're really not any different than the stars. All the atoms in our bodies are releasing photons just like stars are. It's not, that's a fact. So I like to play with radiating, radiance, being radiant, just as like a side note, because I think it is important not to hold, because hold might be resistance, or it might actually be separation too. I'm only going to hold this light. But when you're radiant, there's so much power, and it moves on far beyond you into realms, into the quantum that then are in divine will. And so I just want to throw that out there.
I think that's an excellent point.
And there is a universal law of radiation. That's, we are radiating everything from us. So what would you like to radiate from you? It's totally true. What would you like to radiate from yourself? I mean, whatever we're thinking, feeling, believing, perceiving, energetically vibrating with is what we're radiating from us, whether we know it or not. That's a law.
That is exactly true.
Laws are the only things. When I have been accused of being, what was the word, Elizabeth? Too obsolete? To me,
absolute.
Absolute. Right. But that's because I work with the universal laws, and to the best of my knowledge and the best of my understanding, the universal laws are governing all of us from 5D and 4D, 3D. They are laws of governance that help us navigate our way in an absolute way, and we can go beyond them, but until we get into alignment with them. And that's one of the laws, law of radiation. So we're all radiating from it.
Just like how death is actually the law of recycling. We ought to celebrate it because it's proof the universe loves us.
I'll call that the law of destruction.
Yeah, the law of destruction just recycles energy, and it makes sure that nothing is ever wasted, even at the most minute level. It's never wasted. That's proof that there's love in everything that's happening in this universe. Even black holes radiate stuff. Black holes radiate. Everything's radiating. And
the laws do work in 4D. Someone said, why don't the laws work in 4D? They do.
They do all the way up into 6D. So furthermore, I want to talk a little bit really quick about change, because this is actually something I've been working with for most of my life, is trying to understand how to create change faster. And one of the things I discovered, which was gifted to me from Source through the work I was doing in academia, is that if you start working on your beliefs, your personal beliefs about reality, this would be Lori talking about up-leveling your consciousness, and you also simultaneously start working on your relationship with the material world. And this is a very literal thing. If you are believing that you're in lack, or if you believe that you have a foggy mind and that you can't focus, well, first you're going to work internally, shifting those by recognizing them, understanding them, dissolving them, commanding them to dissolve. And then you're also going to start physically reorganizing your literal 3D life to make sure there's less clutter, because it's actually representative of your mind. The thing is that you can't take these two and make them exclusive. Your beliefs about reality are going to reflect on your material world and the relationship you have with material. So in the 3D experience of a human, that's actually a 12D experience, the manifestation of all of what you believe and what you're working with in consciousness happens at a material level. If you want to have all that happen faster, then make sure you're affecting the material world in your surroundings, and start with your personal surroundings as like a good homework for everybody. Start with your personal surroundings and start there. Start changing your relationship with your personal surroundings while you're working on your inner beliefs, and you're going to see change happen faster.
So I want to share a really good, can I share such a good example of this? Such good stuff what you're saying. When people don't think that they have the ability to change the world, they just don't understand how much power we have. I remember at one point when I was living in Maui and I had a 6-figure credit card debt, you know, from inappropriate spending. I mean, I was working a 6-figure income job and I didn't foresee my future at that time. And anyway, so I remember writing forgiveness letters to all the banks. I remember cutting up all my credit cards. I remember ripping up all my credit card bills. And I remember doing a prayer. And I remember saying, this is the best I can do for this. And I forgive all the banks, and I forgive all myself. I forgive all my debt, and I will repay it in service, because that was the best I could do at that time. And one of the things that happened within a week of that was I literally got letters from several banks saying, we forgive your debt, because the banks were corrupted and they were going, this was all pre-first economic collapse. But it's amazing how that literally changed my physical world within a week.
Perfect example.
It's a great example. Also, if you just clean up your house and you give away stuff, it's a great way to drop pounds. Like in the last year, I dropped 40 pounds, a year ago. And one of the things I was doing over the holidays a year ago was I was filling up bags of things that I was giving away. And I literally would weigh them on the scale. And I'd be like, this is 5 pounds of body weight.
How cool.
You understand? You affect I was doing other things too. I was exercising, but I had always been an exerciser. I was eating healthy. I was eliminating sugar. I had done those things, but I was using a physical experience in a ritualistic way to say, this represents 5 pounds of my life that I am giving away and circulating, giving it to someone else who will like it more. It's 5 pounds of body weight I'm letting go.
Brilliant.
I like it.
Great example. I'm just giving examples of what you were saying.
Oh yeah, it's good. This is good stuff.
It's good stuff, right? When people
Very
start
helpful.
how much power we have. And then if you start, like if you decide in your home, like if you say things like, I'm throwing away all the fluoride toothpaste in my house. I do not want any more fluoride in my world. And you literally just throw it away, and you do it in a way that's good for the earth to the best of your ability. You're literally telling the universe, if you start understanding how the laws of the universe listen to you, that's where your vote counts. You start saying, with the law of intent, consent, and authority, I no longer choose this. This is just not part of my choice anymore. I'm not willing to have this in my house or my home. And you get rid of all chemicals in your house, and you put them in a bag, and you find a way to do something with them, something that's good, helpful. In other words, either throw them out in a dumpster where they can no longer, to the best of your ability, get into the system, for example. I mean, I know toxic chemicals are toxic chemicals, but nonetheless, if you say, I'm no longer willing to have toxic chemicals in my house, and I'm willing to, even if I have to spend the extra $2 to buy healthy, clean cleaning products. You understand that something like that takes Monsanto down. If you say, I refuse to buy genetically modified foods anymore. And if you go into the grocery store, and I've done this for 2 years, the last 3 years, 4 years in Florida, and there's now organics in all the Florida grocery stores. When I first came in, there weren't. I'd walk through the aisles and I'd say, universal laws, hear me now. I choose for more organics. Give me healthy organics in this grocery store. Make it so. I would just work with the laws and tell them, you understand how much power you have when you start working with higher intelligence in an intelligent way, and tell the field what you're willing to have and what you're not willing to have anymore. But you understand, no resistance. You get into resistance and judgment, now you're entangled and struggling. You're going to get back into lower realms.
May I use an example around transforming lack?
Yes.
I've been homeless 3 times. And so how did I transform that level of lack? Good Lord. Well, here's the thing. That's the sensation of, well, I don't have enough money coming in. I can't support myself. That's only one half of the equation. So when I have, and the situations that I was in were very specific. So, you know, coming out of being homeless, at one point I was homeless with a child. And coming out of that, I presented myself to Source. And I did what I call a spiral walk around my town. And I said, Source, show me where I can give my energy, where I can give of my thoughts and my power and my abilities. Show me where I can give, where I will get this flow back into my life. Show me how I can give in order to get abundance, to get revved up, because it's a machine. It's a force. You got to put that energy in and it gets the machine going. And so I'd literally walk around until my heart would light up, and I'd say, okay, I'm going to walk into that business. I'm going to go get a job. I walked into I didn't even know this place existed. I walked into this law office that I saw because my heart lit up, my body lit up, and I said, Source, show me where I can give the most to be able to receive what I need, a home and money and income. And I walked into this law office, and here's these women lawyers, and I said, hi. And they're like, can we help you? And I'm like, well, just wondering if you're looking for any help. And they were like, we are. Do you have a resume? And I said, yeah, I can get you one. And they hired me. They hired me like the next day. That's only one of the ways that I've received many, many jobs doing that same exact thing. By opening up so fully and surrendering to Source. All right, you made me homeless for a reason, because I have something big to do. I have something big to give. So I'm going to go and I'm literally going to present myself, and I'm going to show up where I can give. I volunteered, and I'd get jobs that way. I'd bring in more support. And the support wasn't always monetary. I'd show up to my neighbor's house with a casserole and say, hey, I've got kids too. And I just wanted to know if you wanted to come share a meal once a week to save on money. And you know what? That same potluck lasted for 7 straight years. Every weekend at the peak, we had 100 people coming every week to my house for the same potluck.
That's great.
And this was my community of support, and we gave to each other freely of everything we needed, from childcare to advice to just love to everything, money.
That's so nice.
Well, you stepped out of separation.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that you said, your heart lit up. You asked the universe, your heart lit up. You followed the heart light. You took action. Everything you've just described is everything that you teach. This is how you do it. You listen, you ask, you listen to your own body, or however you discern things, and then you take action, and then you've put yourself out there. You know, that's a fantastic story, Elizabeth. I love it. And it certainly answers the questions.
And lack thing too, because I love that too. It's such a fun conversation, because, you know, when I lived in Maui, I mean, we went for 2 years. I barely had enough food to feed my dogs. I mean, we were rationing. And what I've learned from that is that all of those 2 years were based on my imbalance of overspending on credit card debt. I couldn't pay. I was paying minimums for a long time until that I couldn't even do. But you understand, the most disturbing thing, the most disturbing shadow aspect of ourselves that we have to look at and embrace is when we're in lack, is where we have stolen.
Yeah.
How have we been overtaking and not giving? And if you're in a state of lack, the universe is asking you to start giving. And if you honestly believe that you've been giving so much in all its forms of giving, including tithing, taxes are the universe's way of teaching us to tithe, to give. When the world gets this and you freely start giving at least 10% of your money off the top to God, wherever God shows up in your life, you'll start seeing the world transforms the need for taxes, because people will become generous. But all lack, while it is linked to our sense of self-worth and self-value, it is also linked to our generosity or lack thereof in our lives. And that's not something we want to look at. Now, if you honestly are a truly generous person, if you really are, chances are the only other flip side of that is that you haven't learned to fully receive and you haven't dealt with your self-worth. But if you are experiencing lack in your life, it is an invitation to become generous. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
I think that's beautiful. And I think with that, we will conclude for tonight, because I think that sums it up just really beautifully. Open and giving and the love and the light and embracing it all. I think that it's been a really beautiful night, and I really appreciate both of you being here and sharing, and I really loved this. I hope everybody else loved this panel discussion, and I appreciate every one of you who have been here live with us tonight to participate and share your own thoughts and your questions. This just went so fantastic. Can we bundle, tithe, and give a car away every few years? Is the generosity making up for years of not? What are your thoughts on that real quick?
You got to tithe 10% at least off the top of everything that comes in, even before. Right now, a good tithe to Gabrielle for setting this up. I tagged Gabrielle. She did me a service for my animal as a friend, and I tagged her. She didn't even expect it.
Well, I'm going to share with everybody. I still have to say that I'm so grateful to you for helping me to return my dog to me. Everybody must know out there, we're all animal lovers, all three of us. And Lori's dog's so important to her, my dogs as well. And we had just adopted the brother of our female dog. And he'd only been with us like 6 weeks. And he got out of his leash and ran away. And this is, I'm getting chills. It's such an amazing story. And I had to tell Lori, I was so, God, just so grateful, because I called Lori knowing what Lori does. And I was like, we have not been able to find the dog. He was heading toward our house, but he's really spooked about everything. He doesn't know us really well. And he was just freaked out. And so we could not catch him. Every time we get close, he'd run away again. So he was gone from about 10 p.m. Friday night. And I called Lori Saturday morning, probably about 12 hours later. And we still could not find him. And we'd been out in our whole neighborhood, and our whole neighborhood was looking. I mean, talk about community. I love my neighborhood. I mean, at 11 p.m. to midnight, our community was out looking for our dog. It's so amazing. But we couldn't find him. And so Lori, we did some work, and Lori did some work with me, on the family, and on the dog. And she said to me, Gabrielle, when can you go back out and see and search for him? And I said, gosh, Lori, I have clients until 1:30 today. She said, all right, I'm gonna show him what time that is using the sun. And I'm going to tell you, this is so true and so amazing. Because little boys in our neighborhood, we live in a preserve in Florida. And what that really means is you border the swamp and the forest, right? So we have swamp all around us, which means gators and snakes and all these scary things. So we were freaking out. Anyway, kids were looking all day for this dog, and nobody could find him. But at 1:25, my daughter was out walking the neighborhood with a leash and the treats, and one of the neighbors stopped and said, are you looking for your dog? And she said, yes. She said, I just saw him. Our dog Max had been hiding, which Lori had said that he was hiding and taking shelter. It was very hot, it was 90 degrees, and he came out of hiding somebody saw him, my daughter, and this person took my daughter to the dog. And at 1:30 p.m., I got a call from my daughter that she had the dog. And I just am like, that is, if anybody says, oh, that's just a coincidence, we've been searching for that dog for 15, 16 hours. And he was here in the neighborhood, but just off in a corner swamp area. And that he'd never gone into the swamp. And Lori had told me he's fine. He's just scared and he's hiding. And he came out. And to me, God, that's just the universe right there. Connecting with it, being able to communicate. It was just great.
Can I say, I know we were wrapping up, but I just want to say,
well, there you go.
When the dog came out, there were two things. We gave him a sign when you would be out to receive him, what time of related to the sun overhead. But your dog came home because you did the inner work, Gabrielle. We sat on the phone and we gave you the gifts that were meant for you to receive from consciousness as a result of that dog's service to you. That dog had a mission in service for you. In his departure, he needed you to receive that. So once you said, I'm stepping up, I'm going to do that inner work. And this is what's so important. This is the whole message, is when we're willing to do our inner work, our lives transform. And your dog was able to come home and reunite with you because his contract in terms of his departure was fulfilled through your willingness to do the inner work. I was just the translator, the healer.
Just the connector, I know, but you need that. See, part of getting out of your own way is realizing when it's just not something you're able to do on your own for whatever reason. Who cares? It's just knowing it. Like you said before, discerning. This is something I'm just not able to do it. I'm not able to get past my own emotion or all the things that are going on in my own life, and that I need help. And then accepting it, reaching out, doing all of those things that we've talked about, and realizing that there are people that have that ability. And it's important to know when you've reached your limit and ask for help, however that comes. And I was so, so grateful. And I want everybody to know on this call that there will be another panelist discussion, actually with Lori and Maureen St. Germain, at the end of October. So yes, we're doing it again, and we'll be filtering these throughout the season. We'll be having panelist discussions because this, I just love it. So I hope you all did too. So thank you everybody for being here. Much love. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great night. Mwah. Thank you, ladies. Love you.
Love you too.
Thank you for joining us on the SoulScape.tv show. Go to SoulScape.tv to access the many free gifts from our guests and for more great masterclasses and panelist discussions.